Hello, thank you for joining us. My name's Sue Dearden. I'm a solicitor specialising in health and safety with Finch Consulting. And joining me today is Melvin Sandell, who we call Flip. Flip was a health and safety inspector for 17 years, latterly principal health and safety inspector, and now a health and safety expert with Finch Consulting. And we're going to consider today some recent statistics that have come out and discuss what the implications might be for employers looking forward. So lies, damned lies and statistics is the title. So first of all, Flip, to give this some context, we're going to have a look at the statistics that I think were published in May regarding health and safety, injuries and fatalities, which was for the year before we went into lockdown, so to the end of March 2020. And then we're going to have a look at the more recent statistics which have come out for fatal accidents in the workplace, which take us to March 2021, and see what conclusions can be drawn. So do you want to talk to us first of all about what the statistics show from the May figures?
So the statistics on this slide actually show a quite surprising trend. So 2017-18, there were 555,000 non-fatal accidents reported. There was an increase in the following year to 581,000, and a further large increase of almost 20%, up to 693,000 in the year 1920. And this against a background of a falling number of riddle reports from 71 to 69 to 65. And that's really quite surprising. You know, the standard accident triangle that's used in safety culture systems suggests that the more non-fatals, or the more small, less serious accidents there are, the more larger accidents there will be and the more fatalities there would be. But these statistics here don't seem to bear this out at all. There's been a small jump in the fatals from 2017-18 to 2018-19, but that carries on a statistical trend that goes a couple of years before that as well, around the 140s. But then with an increasing number of non-fatal accidents, there's been a decrease in the number of deaths. Really not intuitive at all, Sue.
Yeah, there's quite a number of interesting points that come out of this slide, I think. In terms of the non-fatal accident increase year on year, do you think there's likely to be any correlating jump? Well, I suppose it's been going up and up anyway, but do you think it's going to be a big jump to correlate with the jump in the fatal figures?
Well, again, an interesting point, because in the year 2020, 2021, the majority of the population were furloughed or working from home, or in some cases just made redundant or whatever.
Except perhaps in higher risk industries. Construction was there at work, agriculture was there at work.
I accept that, but still, an awful lot of people, even in the construction industry, were furloughed. Certainly in the early part of the lockdown, many construction sites shut, partly admittedly because there was a shortage of construction materials available. Really,
I couldn't get cement at one point.
Indeed.
It was outrageous.
So it is. It's counterintuitive that those numbers are going up, but it's counterintuitive that fatalities would go back up given there were less working hours.
Yeah, they've gone back up, but actually, if you look at the line, the trends, 2017-18, you've got 144 fatalities, the next year 147. The figure of 142 seems to be sort of broadly in line with those. The surprising thing is that in the year before lockdown, they went down to 111. Why might that be?
Well, Sue, I have no idea, and it's not adequately explained in the HSE stats as to why that might be. Something in there about a small glitch due to the start of lockdown. But if that were the case, then why didn't that carry on throughout the lockdown period? Effectively, for that period, 2020, 2021, the country was locked down with a couple of small bits in the middle. We were effectively locked down or not working. But as you say, the higher risk industry, certainly agriculture, worked as before. Construction, certainly towards the last of the period, worked as before. And the statistics that HSE have also released about agriculture allocates 41 of those 142 to the agriculture and forestry industries. and there's a large jump that year, a large jump in this year for that industry.
I think it's interesting as well to try and delve into what's behind these figures. And one of the statistics that I thought was particularly pertinent, particularly given my age, was that you've got 30% of the fatalities are over 60s. Not saying that I'm over 60 yet, but why might that be? Why would the older people seem to be at higher risk of receiving fatal injuries in the workplace?
So statistically, Sue, that 10 or 11% may be true, but the older people tend to be concentrated in certain industries. So for instance, agriculture, the average age of a farmer in the UK these days is around 59, and 41 of those 142 up there are agriculture fatalities. And so a lot of those people will be 60 or over. And it's also true that people in their 60s who have accidents don't tend to recover as well as some of the people who are far younger than them. And it's also true to say that older people, A, tend to work in the more traditional industries, and B, tend to have a fairly jaundiced attitude to compliance with the health and safety. It's the I know better attitude in many cases, or the health and safety never did me any good type of attitude, which just allows these accidents to perpetuate. It's changing, it's telling that the younger people in industry these days don't tend to have the serious accidents that the older people do. Employers are required to risk assess young people because their knowledge and acceptance and attitude to risk may be different to older people. You're required to assess other people with special needs. So if somebody has a disability, or perhaps they're pregnant, or there could be other groups that may need special risk assessments done. But the older people, the sort of standard retirement age of 60 and 65 is now gone. People can work on a long while while they're physically capable, they can still carry on working. But their fragility, the fact that they're less manoeuvrable and can react less quickly to changing situations doesn't seem to have resulted in the need for any sort of more thought about the risks they may create to themselves or others in the workplace. So the idea of risk assessing older people may be something that should be looked at as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. On the basis they don't bounce.
On the basis they don't bounce very well if they fall, absolutely.
So what else can we draw from the statistics? I mean, we've obviously not got the figures for non-fatal accidents for the lockdown year. Are we going to see yet another significant surge in non-fatals?
Sue, I don't know, but I think there are a couple of things that need to be taken into account here in the wider employment economy. There are going to be less available people in the market to work in traditional industries such as agriculture, such as food processing. A lot of the East Germans, a lot of the East Europeans that used to work in the UK have gone home as a result of Brexit or COVID and won't be coming back, or won't come back anywhere near the numbers. So are employers going to be tempted to take on the people that can be either the people that don't react so well to training, people that are less competent? Do they need to consider greater levels of training, greater levels of supervision, greater levels of monitoring?
We're seeing that with lorry drivers at the moment.
We've
been on the news that they cannot get the trained lorry drivers, so are flexing the rules to suggest longer hours, which is higher risk. There's a reason for the hours. So competencies and training and getting the right people to keep a lid on the number of accidents is going to be important.
I think that's right, and food factories are going to want to try and food producers are going to want to try and keep production up. Now, with less people, does this mean longer hours? Does this mean more intense working? Does this mean that they're going to want more in the way of production per employee? I don't know, but I mean, it's going to be interesting over the next year to find out what happens with that non-fatal accident number, to see how well people are adapting to these new working conditions.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing behind the statistics is the types of accidents that are behind them. So where you're talking about fatalities, there's the most significant type of incidents that has led to fatality is fall from heights. But when you're talking about the non-fatal accidents, I think the most common causes are slips and trips and falls on the level. Is that likely to continue?
Yeah, I think so. Falls, slips and trips and contact with vehicles have always been there. They fluctuate across different industries. So falls tends to be the biggest killer in construction. Contact with vehicles tends to be the biggest thing in farming.
You can obviously interpret statistics in different ways. It's a bit subjective, but based on the information that we have at the moment, Flip, what would you be your advice to employers? Let's top 3 points.
Okay, so the first would be then that there is going to be a shortage, and two of my points are going to revolve around the fact there is going to be a shortage of employable members of your workforce going forward. So I suppose the first one is that you're probably going to have to accept that your workforce is going to be older than it was before, and that you're perhaps going to have to pick from a smaller pool and perhaps bring in people that you perhaps wouldn't have been your first choice to start with. So you need to think about assessing the risks that these people are going to create in the workplace, and how you're going to manage the day-to-day hazards.
By virtue of their age.
By virtue of their age, and by virtue of the fact they may not be as mobile as they were before. Secondly, there are simply going to be less people around. Your productivity requirements are going to be the same. So how are you going to get that extra work out of the reduced number of people? How are you going to ensure that shortcuts are not dangerous shortcuts? How are you going to ensure that you can keep those lines running safely with less people to supervise, less people to monitor, and less people to manage safety in your workplace?
So reduced competencies mean more training, more supervision perhaps?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And third point?
And the third point is, don't forget the soft stuff in all of this. HSE's priorities for the coming years remain the health part of health and safety, as it has for the last 2 or 3 years. Don't forget the slips and low falls. Don't forget the dust. Don't forget the health. Don't forget the stress. These are the sort of things that are going to get you proactive visits from the regulator. And once they're in your door, then they are free to roam as widely as they want to look at what else you're doing wrong or what else you're doing right.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Flip.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.